The day my son stopped answering my calls was the day before he showed up asking me to co-sign the loan on my own lake house. I want you to think about that order for a second. Silence first, then the ask. Not the other way around. But I'm getting ahead of myself because the silence itself wasn't even the part that broke something loose in me. The part that did it was smaller than that, and I almost missed it completely. My name is Walter Combs. I'm 64 years old. I live in a two-bedroom rental above a hardware store in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, a place I moved into after my wife Diane passed, because the house we'd shared for 31 years had gotten too quiet to stand in. But the real prize of my life, the thing I'd worked 40 years to hold on to, was a lake house on the Door County Peninsula, 4 bedrooms, a boathouse, cedar shake siding gone silver with age, sitting on a bluff above water, so clear in the mornings you could see straight to the bottom. I bought the land in 1988 for less than a used car costs today, and built the place myself, one weekend at a time, for 6 years. It's where my son Derek grew up every summer of his life. I built that place with my own hands. I raised Derek mostly alone after Diane got sick, because somebody had to keep working while somebody else sat in the hospital room, and it turned out to be me doing both. Some years, on no sleep and a lot of gas station coffee. I coached his little league team. I drove him 4 hours each way to a wrestling tournament in Green Bay because he wanted it bad enough to ask me twice. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not telling you that so you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you so you understand exactly what it means when a grown man looks at you and says you owe him something when he grew up with a father who gave him every single thing he had. Welcome back if you've been here before, neighbor. Go ahead and hit that like button for me, and drop a comment letting me know what town you're watching from tonight. This one's going to take a turn you won't see coming. It was a Wednesday. I remember because Wednesday is the only day the diner in town runs the meatloaf special, and I don't miss it if I can help it. I was in my usual booth, the one by the window that looks out on the marina, working through mashed potatoes and half listening to the radio behind the counter, when my phone buzzed. Not a call. Not a text from Derek. A tagged photo on Facebook. Derek Combs is now married to Ashley Combs. I set my fork down slow. I picked up the phone and stared at that notification the way you stare at ice cracking under your boot, where some part of your brain already knows what's coming before the rest of you catches up. I tapped it open. There he was, my son, standing in a vineyard somewhere outside Traverse City, tie loosened, laughing with his head thrown back, his new wife Ashley beside him in a dress the color of champagne. 68 likes. 19 comments. Not one phone call to his father. He looked happy. I thought that, and then I hated myself a little for thinking it, because happy or not, he'd left me standing outside a door I built the frame for. I turned the phone face down on the table. I picked my fork back up. The meatloaf tasted like cardboard, and I ate every bite of it anyway, because some habits are the only thing holding a man together on a day like that. Here's what you need to understand about Derek and Ashley. Derek I raised with my own 2 hands. Derek, I know the way you know a house you built yourself. Every creak, every place the wind gets in. He's got his mother's laugh and my own bullheadedness, and a gift for turning a conversation around so smooth you don't notice you've been walked backward until you're already out the door. Ashley Prescott, 29, works in what she calls brand strategy, which, as near as I can tell, means she gets paid to tell other people what to want. Sharp dresser, sharper handshake, called me Walt. Within 4 minutes of meeting me, which nobody who actually knows me does, not even my own brother. I never disliked her outright. I want to be fair about that. I just never once saw her look at that lake house like it was a home. She looked at it like it was a listing. The first call from Derek came 6 days after I found out from a stranger's photo comment that my only son had gotten married, not to apologize. To manage me. Dad, I know you probably heard already. I did. It just kind of happened fast. Ashley's family had already booked the venue, and it was easier to just... Derek, I said, quiet. Dad, come on, don't make this weird. You'll meet her properly soon. I promise. I hung up on my own son for the first time in my life. I sat in my truck in the diner parking lot for a long while after, watching a couple of gulls fight over a French fry someone had dropped, and I made myself breathe steady until I actually believed it. Took the better part of an hour that time. Now here's where it gets interesting, and I need you to stick with me, because this is the part most folks watching a story like this one tend to miss entirely. This is where I very nearly let myself get taken. The calls started coming regular after that. Derek checking in. Derek asking how my knees were holding up. Derek suddenly remembering, after 29 years, that his father was a person with a pulse. Dad, how's the lake house holding up out there? You still keeping the dock in shape yourself? You're 64, Dad. Ashley and I have been talking, and we just worry about you doing all that upkeep alone out there. Now, if you'd only heard those calls with your ears, and not the 40 years of experience I've got sitting behind mine, you'd have thought that boy loved me something fierce. But I spent 36 years running a construction outfit up and down this peninsula. I have sat across the table from more contractors trying to lowball a bid than I could count on both hands twice over. I know a setup when I'm hearing one, even dressed up soft and calling itself concern. They're circling, I thought, every single time I set the phone down. This is a runway they're building. I just didn't know yet when the plane was set to land. It landed on a Saturday morning in late October. They pulled into my gravel drive at 9:30. Derek had 2 coffees from the place on 3rd Street, and he handed me one without me asking. Black, no sugar, just how I take it. He'd remembered that, or Ashley had told him to remember it. Either way, Dad, this place looks incredible in the fall. You're really living the good life out here, you know that? Come on in, I said. We sat in my front room, the one that looks straight out over the water. Ashley kept touching things. The mantel, the bookshelf, Diane's old ceramic rooster on the side table, the one she picked up at a flea market in Ephraim back when we were still young and broke and happy. Ashley had a look on her face I hadn't seen on anybody in that house before, like she was already redecorating in her head. She's not visiting, I thought. There's something else coming. The talk started slow. Derek asked about my hip. Ashley asked if I'd been eating right. We covered the Packers for a solid 15 minutes, and then Derek leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and gave me that smile he's had since he was 6 years old and wanted a second helping of dessert. Dad, we wanted to talk to you about the lake house. There it is. I said. Derek and I have been talking, he said, and glanced sideways at Ashley, who nodded right on cue, like they'd rehearsed the timing of it in the truck on the drive over. You've got this incredible piece of property just sitting here, and with the market the way it is up here right now, and with you getting to a stage in life where the upkeep's a lot, it just makes sense for it to stay in the family. I'm your only son, Dad, and we'd take real good care of it. We'd never sell it. It'd stay in the family forever. I looked at Derek. He looked back at me with his mother's eyes, and said the words quiet, careful, like something he'd practiced in the truck mirror on the way over. Dad, you owe me this. I'm your only child. It should come to us. The room went dead still. Out on the water, a boat motor cut somewhere far off, and then that went quiet too. Ashley's smile stayed fixed in place, waiting on me. And I, Walter Combs, 64 years old, a man who has never once raised his voice at his own dinner table, though the good Lord knows I've come close, I nodded slow, set my coffee cup down easy on the table, and said the calmest 4 words I believe I've ever spoken in my whole life. Let me make a call. Derek let out a breath. Actually let it out, like he'd been holding it the whole drive over. He thinks he's already won this, I thought. I walked back to my bedroom, shut the door soft behind me, and stood there a minute in the quiet. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in going on 7 months. Ray, I said when he picked up. It's Walter. I need to sit down with you. Today, if you've got the time. Everything all right? My lawyer asked. I looked at the closed door, heard Derek say something low on the other side of it, heard Ashley laugh, easy and relieved. Yeah, I said quiet. Everything's just fine. But here's what Derek didn't know, sitting out there in my front room feeling like a man who'd already won. He didn't know about the conversation I'd had 7 weeks before that. The one that changed the whole shape of things. He didn't know about the call I'd already made, long before he ever practiced that speech in his truck mirror. He didn't know I'd seen this coming since the day I found out about his wedding from a stranger's comment on a photograph. And he most certainly did not know what I'd already set moving. But we're not to the detonation yet. Here's something nobody tells you going into fatherhood. The moment you hold that baby, That small, red, furious little person who can't do one single thing for himself. You sign a contract with the universe. Nobody hands you a pen. Nobody witnesses it. But it's binding all the same, more binding than anything Ray Delgado ever drew up in his 31 years lawyering in this county. The contract reads, I will give this boy everything I never had. I signed that contract in a hospital room in Green Bay on a March morning when Derek Allen Combs came into this world at 7 pounds even. And somewhere down the line, I still couldn't tell you exactly when, Derek decided that contract only ran the one direction. I drove to Ray's office that same Saturday, while Derek and Ashley sat back at my place feeling like the whole thing was settled. I was still holding that coffee cup Derek bought me. Hadn't finished it. Ray looked at me across his desk, then at the cup, then back at my face. You look like a man who just walked away from something, he said. Working on it, I said. How fast can you move on transferring a property? He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands over his stomach the way he does when he's already 3 steps ahead of you. Depends where it's headed. Anchor House. Over on Cedar Street in Sturgeon Bay. Ray didn't blink right off. He let the words sit there a second, settling like sediment in a glass of water left too long on the counter. Scott, I've already talked to their director, Marlene Osei. She's expecting to hear from me. When did you? 7 weeks ago, Ray. I started this the day after I found out about the wedding from a comment on a photograph, if you can believe that. Another silence. Tell me the whole thing, he said. So I told him. Told him about the photograph, the 68 likes, the 6 days of nothing before the phone calls started. Slow and careful, circling that lake house, the way a hawk circles a field. It thinks nobody's watching. Ashley's the architect, I told Ray. Derek's the delivery man. She knows I won't tell my own son no to his face the way I'd tell a stranger no. She knows I look at him and I still see him at 6 years old asking for more cake. Ray nodded slow. What are you feeling right now, Walter? Honestly. I sat with that a second. Tired, I said. Not angry, really. Just tired. And about as clear-headed as I've been in years. No fog to it. No second-guessing myself. That scare you any, hearing yourself say that? Ray asked. As your lawyer, I mean. A little, I admitted. But he was already reaching for a legal pad. Now let me tell you about Anchor House, because that wasn't just where the house was headed. That's where I came from, more or less. Not literal like. I never was a ward of the state, but close enough that the difference stops mattering much once you've lived it. My father, Elmer Combs, worked the shipyards in Sturgeon Bay his whole life. Good man. Tired man, mostly, by the time I really knew him. Dropped dead of a stroke at 53 when I was 17, left behind a 3-room house with a bad furnace, a truck that needed a jump half the mornings, and about $300 folded up in a Folgers can on top of the icebox. My mother, Ruth Combs, did everything a body could ask of her, which for a grieving widow in Door County in the late 70s with a 17-year-old boy and bills that didn't care one bit about grief was a whole lot. She took in mending and cleaned the church on Saturdays. I dropped out and worked the docks like my father before me. We ate a lot of fish, because fish was free, if you were willing to stand in cold water long enough to catch it, and nobody up here judges a boy for surviving on it. I used to walk past Anchor House on my way to the docks every single morning. Big brick building with a chain-link fence around the yard, kids out there playing in whatever the weather gave them. I'd look at those kids and think to myself, they don't have what I've got. Even with next to nothing, I've still got more than them. That thought never left me, not once, not in 40-some years. In 1989, the year I finished the last wall of the lake house, I wrote Anchor House a check for $2,000, no name attached. Sat in my truck outside the post office on 3rd Street and thought about my mother's Folgers can with $300 in it and thought, 2,000 is something. Might matter to somebody. It became a yearly thing after that. The number changed as things changed for me. By 2012, I was sending $25,000 a year, still no name on it. Diane knew. She's the one who'd remind me every November before I forgot. Nobody else did. Not even Derek. Especially not Derek. Because I never did it to be thanked for it. I did it because I owed something to whatever had let me come out the other side of my 20s in one piece, and giving it quiet was the only honest way I knew to pay that back. Marlene Osei is 58. She's run Anchor House for 19 years. She's got a handshake that means something and a look in her eye like somebody who's watched too many kids age out of the system with nowhere left to go and no one waiting on the other side of that door. Her office is small. One desk, two chairs, a corkboard covered edge to edge in drawings kids have left behind over the years. I'd called her 7 weeks before, sitting on my back porch watching the fog burn off the water on a Tuesday morning. Told her, I want to sign the lake house over, whole property, plus an endowment, enough to run a real transition program for kids aging out of foster care. Give them a door that actually opens onto something. The quiet on her end lasted long enough. I checked my phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Walter, she finally said, and her voice had gone somewhere I didn't have a name for. Do you understand what that would mean for these kids? I think I do, I told her. No, she said soft. I don't think you do yet. But you will. Back in Ray's office, I laid the whole thing out plain. Full transfer of the property, the lake house, and the 4 acres it sits on, appraised at just over $2 million, over to Anchor House. Irrevocable charitable trust. On top of that, an additional endowment of $600,000. The proceeds from a storage facility I'd been quietly selling off over the summer. Money I'd meant to put toward my own retirement. Instead of rolling it into my own accounts, I signed the whole payout straight into the trust. Ray wrote and didn't say a word for a good while. Finally, he looked up. Derek gets nothing at all. Derek gets a letter, I said, and a photograph. Walter. He told you that you owed him. Ray. He sat in my own front room and told me I owed him a $2 million piece of land the same way you'd ask somebody to pass the butter. He's your godson, near enough. He is, I said, and I love that boy. I'll love him till they put me in the ground next to Diane. But love and debt aren't the same animal, and somebody should have taught him that a long time before now. I paused a second. I'm teaching him now. Ray looked at me a long moment, then clicked his pen closed. All right, he said. Give me 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were about the strangest of my life. Derek called 3 times, all of them warm, easy, sure of himself, the calls of a man who thinks the paperwork's already as good as done. Dad, Ashley was thinking maybe we'd swing by the lake house next weekend, just to start getting a feel for the space, you know. Start planning where we'd. I'll let you know, I said. Oh. Okay. Everything all right out there? Just fine, I said. How's Ashley's family taking the cold up here? We're actually back down in Green Bay now, Dad. Right, I said. Of course you are. I hung up and stood in my little kitchen above the hardware store and let myself have exactly 30 seconds of feeling the full weight of what I'd already done. 30 seconds, no more. Then I put the kettle on. If you've stuck with me this far, go on and drop where you're watching from down in the comments, and hit that like button while you're at it, would you? It helps more than you'd think. The paperwork got signed on a Tuesday, Ray's office, morning light coming in flat and gold off the bay through the window behind his desk. I signed my name in 4 places. Ray notarized it. His assistant witnessed. He slid the folder across the desk when it was done and just looked at me a while, not saying anything. You doing okay? He finally asked. I thought about Diane, about that hospital room in Green Bay, about a Folgers can with $300 in it and a 17-year-old kid walking past a chain-link fence, watching somebody else's kids play in the mud. Yeah, I said. I believe I finally am. I shook Ray's hand, walked down the stairs past the barber shop below his office, out onto 3rd Street, walked to my truck, one more stop left to make. The lake house was empty when I got out there. I walked every room of it slow, one last time, no hurry to it. The bedroom where Diane and I used to lie there Sunday mornings and watch the light come up off the water. Derek's old room still had the model airplanes hung up from the ceiling on fishing line that I'd always meant to take down and never did. The kitchen where I'd made more pancakes than I could ever count. I stood a long time in the front room. On the wall, Diane's painting, a watercolor she did herself of the view off that exact porch, all blue and gray with one thin line of gold where the sun caught the water in the evenings. I took it down, careful, wrapped it in a moving blanket from the truck bed, carried it out, locked the front door, and stood there a second with my hand flat on the wood. Thank you, I thought. Not to anybody in particular. Just out. Into the air. The way you talk to a place that's given you everything it had. Then I walked to the truck, set Diane's painting in the passenger seat where she used to sit, and drove off without one look in the mirror. Derek called the next morning, cheerful and easy, a man with no idea the ground under his boots had already shifted weeks before. Hey, Dad. So Ashley wanted to know if Ray's got the paperwork drawn up yet, because we want to be ready to sign whenever you are. Ray, I said. What? Call Ray's office. He's got the paperwork ready. He wants you and Ashley out at the house this Friday morning to go through everything. A pause, something in my voice, and this time, he caught it. Dad, is everything okay? I looked over at Diane's painting, hanging now above my little fireplace in that apartment over the hardware store. Everything's exactly the way it ought to be, I said. What happened to Derek and Ashley over the next 3 days wasn't the kind of thing that heals up clean. It's the kind that leaves a mark. The kind that, if you're honest with yourself lying awake at 2 in the morning, you know good and well you brought on yourself with your own 2 hands. I know, because I watched every second of it happen. Ray showed up at my place at 9:30 Friday morning, single manila folder under his arm. Sat out on the porch with black coffee, waiting. 10 o'clock sharp, they pulled in. Derek got out first, wearing a jacket that cost more than my truck, grinning like a man walking up to collect a lottery ticket. Ashley followed behind, holding a leather folder to carry the deed home in. They thought they were walking in to sign something. They had no idea they were walking into a door already closed. Dad. Ray, Derek said, stepping up onto the porch, hand already out. Glad we're finally getting this squared away. Ray didn't take his hand, just slid the folder across the porch table. Open it, Derek, he said, voice as flat and still as the bay on a windless morning. Derek's grin slipped, just a little at first. He picked the folder up, flipped it open, started reading. I watched his eyes move down the first page, then the second. Watched the color go out of his face fast, like something had reached in and pulled it out through the back of his neck. What is this? He said, looking up at Ray, his voice already cracking. This says Anchor House Irrevocable Charitable Trust. What in the hell is this, Dad? Ashley snatched the pages out of his hand, eyes darting across the words. Where's the deed transfer to us? She said. Where is it? There is no transfer to you, I said, standing up slow from my chair. The lake house was signed over to the charity 7 weeks ago. It's done, recorded down at the county. It's not coming undone. You can't do this, Derek said, his whole composure coming apart at the seams now. We had an understanding, Dad. We can contest this on the grounds that... There's no grounds, Derek, I said, pointing at the front door. Now go on, both of you, inside. We're going to have ourselves one last conversation. We sat in the front room. Same chairs as before, but a different weight in the air entirely. Before, they'd walked in like the place was already theirs. Now they sat like folks waiting on a doctor to come back with bad news. Ashley sat rigid, furious, while Derek just stared at me, his chest going up and down too fast, tears finally starting up in his eyes. Dad, he said, and his voice cracked clean on that one word. Why? And I'll tell you the truth, that crack in his voice near got me. Near did. Hold, I told myself. Hold on, Walter. I need to show you something, I said. I reached down beside my chair and picked up the shoebox I'd set there before they ever pulled in, because I knew this morning was coming. Old work boot box, corners soft with age. Had it since 1988. I set it on the coffee table between us. Derek looked at it. What is that? Open it, I said. He looked at Ashley. She shrugged, at a complete loss, maybe for the first time in her life. He leaned forward and lifted the lid. Inside sat a photograph, a stack of receipts held together with a rubber band gone brittle, a folded newspaper clipping from a Sturgeon Bay paper dated 1989, and an envelope with his name written on the front in my own hand. He picked the photograph up first. It was me at 17, standing outside the shipyard gate in January. You could tell by my breath hanging in the air. I'm wearing a coat that wasn't half warm enough, holding a lunch pail, squinting into whoever's camera it was. I looked tired in that particular way. A young man looks tired when he's carrying more weight than a body his age ought to carry. Derek stared at it a long moment. I didn't have a thing back then, I said quiet. Your great-grandfather had just died. We had $300 in a coffee can, a furnace that quit twice a winter, and a truck that started when it felt like it. I worked the docks 6 days a week. Your great-grandmother took in mending and cleaned the church on Saturdays. He was still looking at the photo. I walked past Anchor House every single morning on my way to the shipyard, I told him. Every morning, Derek. Looked at those kids behind that fence and thought, even broke, even bone-tired, even with nothing to my name, I've still got more than they do. And I told myself someday, when I've got something real, I'm going to do right by that. I nodded down at the receipts. Those are every gift I ever sent Anchor House, starting in 1989, 35 years running. Derek slipped the rubber band off slow, looked at the first receipt, then the next, then the next. His hands had gone completely still. Dad, he whispered. 35 years. I said again. No name on any of it, because I never did it to be thanked. I did it because it was a debt I owed to something a whole lot bigger than myself. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and looked my son straight in the eye. You didn't call your own father to tell him you were getting married, Derek. Then you showed up weeks later, with a coffee I didn't ask for, looking to collect my whole life's work like it was something owed to you. I've loved you since the morning you were born. But love isn't a debt, son, and I am not a bank. The day you started treating your mother's memory like a real estate deal was the day I got clear on all of it. The room sat dead silent. Ashley, to her credit, or maybe her shame, didn't say one word through any of it. There's an envelope in there, with your name on it, I told Derek. Go on and take it. He reached in with a hand that wasn't quite steady, pulled it out, opened it. Inside, one photograph, one note in my own handwriting. The photograph showed the front of Anchor House, taken the week before. Out front, a new sign going up. I'd stood there and watched them install it myself. Anchor House Legacy Center. For every kid who needs a door that opens. And below that, smaller, in memory of Diane Combs, given by Walter Combs, Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. Derek made a sound I'd never once heard come out of him before, something caught between a breath and a sob that he swallowed back down before it could finish coming out. He unfolded the note. I already knew every word of it. Wrote it at my kitchen table at 6 in the morning, tore it up 3 times, then finally wrote the last version straight through without stopping. It read, Derek, your mother would have loved every one of those kids. She'd have had them all over for pancakes and known every name inside a week. That's just who she was. I named that place after her because she earned it, and you know exactly why she earned it. I don't hate you, son. I couldn't if I tried. But I won't be collected from. I'm not an asset sitting on a piece of land. I'm your father. When you're ready to understand the difference, you know where to find me. Dad. Ashley tried one more angle. I'll give her that much. She's a stubborn one. Walter. Look, there's still ways we could work something out here. Legal avenues that. Ashley, I said, standing up. I'm going to say this once, plain as I know how to say anything. I looked her dead in the eye. I'm 64 years old. I built every single thing I own out of a January paycheck and a coffee can with $300 in it. I've forgotten more about property law than you've ever learned. My lawyer's got 31 years of ironclad work behind him, and I made this decision long before you two ever pulled into my driveway with a coffee I didn't order. I walked to the front door and opened it. There's nothing left to work out. No avenues. It's done. Ashley looked over at Derek. Derek was still looking down at the photograph of the new sign. He stood up slow, folded the note, put it away in his jacket pocket, picked the old photograph up off the table, the one of me at 17 in the cold. Can I keep this? He asked, quiet. Yeah, I said. You can. He walked past me and out the front door without another word. Ashley straightened her coat, looked at me with something on her face I couldn't quite name, somewhere between fury and something that might, given about 10 years, turn into something closer to respect. She walked out after him. I shut the door, stood in my own hallway a minute, then walked back inside and looked up at Diane's painting above the fireplace, the one from the lake house, all that blue and gray, and the one thin streak of gold where the evening sun used to hit the water. We did right, I told her, quiet, the way you talk to somebody who can't answer back anymore but you know is listening all the same. We did right by those kids. 4 weeks later, I drove out Cedar Street on a Tuesday morning. Anchor House Legacy Center was open for business. Fresh paint, new signs standing tall out front. The old chain link fence was gone, replaced with a proper wood one, painted white. Derek's idea, as it turned out. He'd called Marlene Osei himself, which I only found out about later, and it cracked something open in my chest that I'm still working through even now. Kids were out in the yard, teenagers mostly, 16, 17 years old. The ones the system calls aged out, which has got to be about the cruelest phrase anybody ever came up with, like childhood's a subscription that just runs out on you. I parked across the street and sat there with my coffee. One kid, tall, maybe 16, wearing a Packers jersey 2 sizes too big for him, sat on the front steps reading something. He looked up, caught me watching. I lifted my coffee cup toward him. He nodded back, then went on reading. That's it, I thought. That's the whole thing, right there in front of me. I still live above the hardware store on 3rd Street. I still get the meatloaf special every Wednesday. Door County in the winter goes quiet and cold and settles into being exactly what it is, no apologies. And I've come to understand that I've finally settled into being exactly what I am too. Derek called me last month. Not about the property. Not about money or timelines or anything that needed a lawyer's signature. He called to tell me he'd started volunteering out at Anchor House on weekends. Said one of the boys there reminded him of himself at 16. Said it quiet, like he was confessing to something. I told him, your mother would have loved hearing that, Derek. He went quiet a second. I know, Dad, he said. I know she would have. Ashley, last I heard, moved on to some job down in Chicago. Good for her, I suppose. Good for both of us, maybe. Here's what I want you to carry away from all this, neighbor. I didn't come out ahead in this because I took something away from my son. I came out ahead because I finally stopped letting him take something from me. There's a difference between a father and a bank account, between love and what somebody thinks they're owed, between a legacy and a transaction. I'm Walter Combs. I'm 64 years old. I grew up with next to nothing, built something real with my own 2 hands, and in the end I handed it to kids who remind me exactly what nothing looks like, so they wouldn't have to carry it alone the way I did. If this one meant something to you, go on and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me down in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I'll see you next time, neighbor.